How's everybody doing? Good? All right. So, long ago in Jerusalem, there lived a girl named Netanya. Everything little Netanya planted always burst into bloom. It was as though she was magical. Trees would grow, bushes would emerge. Netanya had a special talent for growing gorgeous flowers. Does she remind anyone of the character from Hadestown, Persephone? Any Hadestown people here? She loved flowers and planted them everywhere. Wherever you walked in Jerusalem, the air smelled like oranges and spring. The king at the time loved everything about Jerusalem. He loved the birds, even though they sometimes chirped too loudly for his taste, and the animals that you can see from your house. But more than anything else, the king loved the overflowing of flowers. Not surprisingly then, the king tended his own garden. Now, he was a very old king. You guys might call him ancient. And he needed to find someone to lead the kingdom when he was ready to step down. Who would that person be, he wondered. How shall I choose them? Because the king loved flowers so much, he decided he wouldn't choose his successor. He would let the flowers make the choice. That seems reliable, right? The next day, the king announced, all the children in Jerusalem, along with their parents, come to the king's garden. The kids were thinking, will there be candy or cookies? The adults thought about the early morning and all the errands they had to get done, but when the king calls you to the garden, I would imagine you go without asking questions. There the king addressed the children and the parents. He said, I will give you each a special flower seed. It is now Pesach, the holiday of Passover, which means, by the way, the cookies weren't maybe quite as good as they could have been, more like macaroons. But the king continued, next year at this time, all the children will come back to the garden with your flower, and we will find out who will lead the kingdom after I retire. The king's announcement created a tremendous amount of excitement. All the children danced around and fidgeted while they stood in line to get their seeds, hoping to get a colorful one or a big one. It's too bad there were no fidget toys invented then. All the parents, of course, were just as excited. Each parent believed their child had the potential to become the chosen one. Netanya, of course, had heard about the king's contest, and she was there to receive her seed. Of all the children in the king's garden that day, Netanya was probably the happiest, since she believed she had a magic power that allowed her to grow beautiful things. She was sure she would grow the most beautiful flower of all. Netanya took her seed home and planted it in a flower pot that she filled with the best soil from her yard. She watered the seed every day, not too little and not too much, because she was an expert. And she waited for it to grow and blossom into a beautiful flower. Days passed, but nothing grew in Netanya's pot. She was worried. So once Pesach ended, Netanya put new, even better soil in the pot. Then, as the month of Elul approached, the month that precedes Rosh Hashanah, Netanya transferred the seed to a pot containing even better soil. She looked carefully day after day, hoping to see something, anything, but nothing grew, not even a sprout. The whole year passed, and Pesach came around again. It was time to eat matzah and more macaroons and have the Seder, and it was time for the children of Jerusalem to show the king the results of his big project. Netanya held her empty pot as she walked, in no hurry, to the king's garden. All the other children rushed past her. They were wearing their best clothes, dressed in suits, most colorful clothes you'd ever seen, and carrying pots in which grew the most beautiful flowers. One of Netanya's friends ran by. His pot held a flower so huge it looked like an entire plant. "You're not really going to the king with an empty pot like that, are you?" he asked Netanya. "I've grown lots of flowers better than yours," she said, "but my seed just wouldn't grow." Netanya's father, who was accompanying her on her long, slow walk to the king's garden, tried to comfort her. He put his hand on Netanya's shoulder. "You did your best, and your best has to be good enough to present to the king," he said. Netanya and her father reached the king's garden. The king strolled up and down the line of children. Each held out their pot as the king looked at each flower one by one. Truly, each flower was more beautiful than the next. There were pinks and yellows and greens and blues and spectacular oranges, flowers to match every color of the rainbow. But strangely, the king didn't admire the flowers. In fact, he walked past each pot and he frowned. He uttered not a word. Finally, the king came to Netanya, who was holding her head in shame. "Why did you bring me an empty pot?" asked the king. Netanya was almost ready to cry. "I planted the seed you gave me. I watered it every day, and it just didn't sprout. I put it in a better pot with better soil, and it still didn't sprout. I tended it all year long, but nothing grew. And today, I bring you an empty pot without a flower. It's the best I could do." The king heard these words and said, "I found her! Netanya, your gift is not a flower, but you." The king turned to all the other children and their parents. "A child who tries her hardest and brings her best, even when she fears her best is not good enough, is a child who is to be valued and admired and rewarded," said the king. Netanya became a great gift to herself and Jerusalem, and she ruled the land after the king stepped down. This is not just a story about making an effort and doing your best, although many of us wondered whether Netanya would just take a flower from her garden and stick it in the pot, right? It's not just about being honest, although it is impressive that Netanya didn't try to give an excuse like "my dog ate my flower" or "my brother ran it over with the lawnmower." As the king told us, this story is about having strength, confidence, and believing in yourself. If you do your best and you're honest about what you've done, then what you have to offer, it will be worthwhile no matter what. If you think about it, it's not surprising that the king didn't really care about the flowers. He cared about the person who brought it and how that person would act if they were someday going to be chosen king or queen. A leader has to believe in themselves and have the guts to do what is right, even if they're afraid other people might give them a hard time. So it's not just about cheating, but about having the guts not to cheat even if everyone else is cheating. It's not just about respecting other people. It's about treating a person with respect, giving them a chance even when others aren't doing the same. It's also about putting yourself out there, whether at school or at home or in the field or on stage or wherever you spend your time, and knowing that you can be proud of yourself for doing the best you can, no matter what. Amen.